Welcome back once again to my series, A Look Back at the 1900s. And in this seventh and final episode, I am going to be examining the social life that we used to enjoy back then. For now that I've talked about the old school social values of the 1900s and the theories that make them compelling, let's delve into the practical side of how social life actually functioned and worked in the ancient world. As many of you young people probably wonder, how exactly did social life go back in the old days so that you could make friendships and do dating and such? What was the day-to-day life like back then in those ancient times that we should follow as an example today so that we could still have those things? Well, first of all, being social started at home, where we would often not live in isolation, but with others. And even if we didn't and we lived alone, we would socialize with our very own neighbors every chance that we got. Oftentimes on a daily basis, if we were coming and going at around the same times, which for people who work a 9-to-5 job is very common. For those who live in densely populated areas, like renting an apartment in a building in an urban area as I do, that just meant more people to talk to and hang out with in common living areas. For instance, when the weather is nice, my neighbors will go outside to socialize and smoke blunts, and they'll just, sit and chat on the stoop or, bring out some long chairs into the grass. And they will actually also have family and friends who do not live here come and join them. So seeing that they were social types, I began joining them outside as well to be social. And I started going outside with a lawn chair and a book whenever it was nice out, just to relax and see if they or any of the other neighbors in the complex would come outside and feel like being social with me. And I would talk to anyone and everyone who passed me by and try to, introduce myself and become acquainted. And I also started taking walks along the perimeter of the property and introducing myself to every single one of my neighbors I saw then, and taking the time to stop and chat them up and get to know each other as well. Now, after years of doing this, everyone who lives here who is not a shut-in has at least met me and knows me by name, and most of them have gotten acquainted with me. And as for the neighbors who live below me or next door, who hang out on the stoop when the weather's nice, I've gotten to know them quite well and consider some of them to be friends who I'm getting quite close to over time. It is this type of behavior that has turned this apartment complex from just a neighborhood into a community with community values. And this is the type of thing that everyone should be doing. For who else are you going to turn to if you need a tablespoon of sugar or salt and don't want to run all the way to the store? And then, on top of home life, social life used to continue at work, where we would be friendly with our coworkers and customers too. Though it's not always appropriate, many non-professional relationships were often formed in professional environments. The bosses may not have liked it, but tough shit. It's just too natural to be social with people you met in any context and do things such as asking for each other's phone numbers and making plans to get together for drinks outside of work. And for people like me, as an author who works from home, many of us would either go to cafes or somewhere public to work where we could be social, or we would make excuses to leave the house almost every single day and be social while out and about wherever we went. For instance, I will, instead of getting 1 to 2 weeks worth of groceries every time I go to the grocery store, only get a few days worth, opting to run these errands as frequently as possible, almost every day if the weather is nice, which I do on foot or bicycle, often stopping by a local park to sit down on a park bench and do some reading and writing, and will be friendly with anyone nearby. I will also offer to run errands for my neighbors who need some assistance too, so I get out even more often. And while I'm at the grocery store, I will be friendly and social with the security guards or police at the door, other customers who are shopping nearby, and of course the cashiers when I check out, and attempt to make chit-chat and friends while I'm there. For people who do not work from home and do not need to make these types of excuses, it is, however, still a good idea to socialize with people other than your coworkers. And an old tradition used to be going to happy hour after work, which was a great way to meet new people and casually socialize on a daily basis. If you're not a drinker of alcohol, then simply swap the bar for a cafe, which doesn't have to be done after work, but can be done on your way to work. So just be sure to go much earlier than necessary if you do that. We also used to treat weekends as obligatory recreational social events and would find things to do every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that we could, be it going to a nightclub, which used to be called discotheques and were much better back then as they actually played jazz and funk music. But before that, there were also jazz clubs, which were even better. And unfortunately, the nightclub scene has gone downhill over time. And we could really use some good nightlife entrepreneurs to bring back the good types of clubs that used to have real music played by real bands with real instruments. Or, of course, you could go to a concert or some sort of event like a convention or a social networking event, or just going out to restaurants and the mall or wherever. It doesn't really matter where you're going as long as you are going somewhere, especially places where there will be large numbers of other people that you can talk to. And most importantly, when you meet new people who you hit it off with, you have to ask them if they want to hang out sometime. That's what we did back in the day. And so it was normal and natural to make new friends and start hanging out with new people and form whole friend groups that way. And it still can be normal and natural for you if you do it normally and naturally the same way that we used to. And if you're wondering how people met prospective romantic partners back then and then scheduled dates without any dating sites and apps, well, we did it this same exact way that we would make new friends that I'm describing. The only difference is that instead of asking someone to hang out, we would ask them to, quote, go out, with the implication that it would be a date, on which you would make a real effort to get to know them more intimately in ways you wouldn't be getting to know a friend. Some of us guys back then were known as what were called pickup artists, and we did this with just about every attractive girl that we saw. It got us a lot of connections and quite a bit of sex. In fact, back in those days, people were having way more sex than they are today with dating apps. And we were also getting married and having babies a lot more too. In fact, I had a child when I was just 23 years old. And he's just about all grown up now. And I did not meet his mother online. I met her through friends by just being social and hanging out with new people. If you adopt these pro-social behaviors, you won't have to be an isolated incel anymore and won't need to use technology to create a fake substitute social life for you on social media and dating apps with fake online relationships with people you never see or even hear the voices of. If being social and making friends is something you know you need to do, then you need to make excuses to get out of the house every day and away from your phone too. And do so and talk to as many people as you can. Make social networking a priority, like one of those salespeople who does it as their job. And find places where there will be large numbers of people that you can go to as frequently as possible, and try to meet as many new people as you can every single day. And keep score too, which is exactly what us old school PUAs did to overcome our loneliness and social anxiety and isolation and become massive players who would be a man about town, going out to big social venues almost every day, be it happy hour, a nightclub, a networking event, a meetup group, or whatever. And because of that, we would have multiple friend groups develop in no time, and start getting dates just about every other day, and start getting laid by a new girl almost every week on average. The most important thing to keep in mind is that back in the social golden age, people were practicing good social communication and language skills, mainly because we did not have the obstruction of cell phones and other internet technology having taken over and putting up these roadblocks for us in all of our relationships. Now, I know that many of you may not think of them as obstructions, but a conductor that keeps you connected. But you are wrong. It is indeed an obstruction, and is not connecting you with others. Rather, it is keeping you disconnected. You see, back in those days when we were out and about, we would not have a cell phone or anything like that in front of our face obstructing our view of others. And we would not be wearing headphones on top of that either. Of course, there were people who would do things like reading books or listening to a Walkman or Discman in the late 1900s, but these things didn't isolate people the way that being absorbed in a cell phone does today. Those people were still very approachable, and it was actually commonplace to interrupt someone and ask them what they were listening to or reading, and then strike up a conversation about it that could actually go somewhere in many cases. Unlike today, where you'd be seen as nosy for asking someone what they were doing on their cell phone, which is why no one tries to talk to you while you're on it. So you must put your cell phone away and turn it off entirely and make yourself available to others. Another thing about the good old days is that we had certain social protocols that were part of what was called polite society and were conducive to friendships and other types of relationships. So we tried to not be rude or off-putting to others and avoided doing things that would interrupt our interactions or prevent relationships, such as answering the phone. Unlike today, where people are constantly distracted by their phones and cannot have a conversation without zoning out and starting to scroll through notifications and respond to texts. Back in those days, people actually listened and responded back and forth in conversation, ongoing for long periods of time. This is how in-depth conversations occurred, and thus relationships developed. And this is because people recognized that interruptions and distractions are in fact rude. So if people were hanging out at someone's house, that person would usually not answer the phone and would either ignore it, turn off the ringer, or let the answering machine get it while entertaining their guests, which was just one aspect of hospitality that has become lost today. And if you want to make friends, you are going to have to learn to do the same thing and start ignoring that phone of yours. Or better yet, turn off your notifications or turn off the whole damn thing, or even leave it in the car or at home entirely. But either way, just don't be fucking rude. And speaking of phones and answering machines, another thing that is different today from back then, when we had landlines, a phone that was attached to the wall, is that when people would get home from work in those days, the first thing they would do, along with checking their mail, would be to check their answering machines, or later voicemail. And when they did have messages from friends on their answering machine or voicemail, they would return the call immediately or almost immediately, rather than just ignoring them indefinitely or just texting them back as people do today. I can't tell you how many people I've called because I had something big to talk about, like, a story to tell or something. So I would leave a message telling them so and to call me back, just to have them text me, "Got your message, sup?" And it's like, if I could have told you in a text, I would have, dumbass. If you want to be friends, you got to return phone calls. And as previously stated, back then, we were only calling because we weren't together then. And calling meant making plans on when to get together next, which is how we ended just about every call. We wouldn't spend hours upon hours on the phone every day talking to people instead of seeing them. We'd schedule a get-together and do that kind of socializing in person. And when we would meet up and hang out, we wouldn't just show up at someone's house and then wait in their driveway. Even if we were picking the person up, we would go up to the door and use these magical little buttons called doorbells to let them know we were there. And they would then come and open the door and let us in. Even if we were all supposed to be leaving together, we would still do this. And on top of that, we would then be friendly with their whole family or whoever else was there while we were over there. Okay. And I can't tell you how many people these days seem to have somehow forgotten how a doorbell works and will just show up at my place and wait in the car and text me something stupid. Sometimes they'll just text me okay, as if I'm supposed to know that means that you're here. Right? And they will do this even if they're supposed to be coming over to hang out inside, right? Inside my apartment. They will just wait in their car and text okay, or maybe they'll text "I'm here" or something more comprehensive, right? But the thing is, meanwhile, I'm not paying attention to my phone and have turned it off so that I can focus on getting ready. So I won't see their text, and they will wait out there for up to 20 minutes or more. Even people who are my age, who I used to hang out with the old-fashioned way, but have obviously been reprogrammed and turned into NPCs by this modern internet and technology-based culture. Like, why would you be waiting in your car in the parking lot for someone you're supposed to be hanging out with inside when you know how doorbells work? Don't be fucking retarded. It's a fucking button that you press to get me to open the door. And we're supposed to be hanging out in here, right? So don't be a fucking weirdo. Don't be a stranger. Come to the door and push the fucking button. And then don't get upset with me that you were waiting out in the car for 20 minutes or more because you didn't ring the fucking doorbell. I even had one old high school buddy who used to hang out with me every weekend. So we were very close, and he was always over at my place when he was in town on the weekends, and he comes over and waits in his car for 20 minutes and is texting me instead of coming to the door. And then he literally, because the car was running for so long, runs out of gas. He realizes he's getting below E, and he has to go to the gas station to get more so that his car can keep idling. So he goes to get gas and comes back. And at that point, he's 30 minutes late in my mind, right? So I finally check my phone to see what the fuck is going on with this guy. And I see that he's been texting me. And so I finally, call him back. And he's like, yeah, I've been here. And I'm like, then why don't you come to the fucking door? Just like you used to every weekend. And he's like, oh, I didn't think about it. I mean, plus you live in an apartment building and I don't know what apartment is yours. I'm like, well, if you came to the door, you would see my name on one of the buttons. Like, it is so fucking stupid. There's no real excuse for it. There's just no logical, reasonable explanation why someone would have used to be able to use a doorbell and now cannot and will run out of gas waiting in the parking lot for someone that they're supposed to be coming over to see. It just doesn't make any sense. It is so fucking retarded. I cannot believe it. And this guy is someone who I used to think was intelligent until that happened. And if you feel like being social, but you don't feel like leaving the house at all and going out, that also doesn't mean that you have to be isolated and become mentally ill like people are today. You see, what we did back in the day was a little something we called hosting, where we would invite people over to hang out at our place, just like I'm talking about me doing now. If you can actually get people to come to your door these days. And back then when we practiced this, we also practiced something we called hospitality, which means that we invited them to make themselves at home at our place and actually helped them to feel comfortable there and get their wants and needs met while they were here by serving them food and drink instead of expecting them to go hungry and thirsty while there, and catering to their needs, providing entertainment of some kind, which we would respect their preferences of, which meant we wouldn't put on our favorite music if they found it abrasive. Like I wouldn't go putting on heavy metal music for someone who doesn't like it or anything like that. Or expect them to sit through our favorite movie, even if it's not their sort of thing. You wouldn't want to put on your favorite romance movie if you're hanging out with a guy. If you're a girl hanging out with a guy who doesn't like romance movies, or if you're a guy, you wouldn't put on, an action movie or a horror movie for a girl, right? But we would actually ask people what they wanted to do and provide that kind of entertainment that they would enjoy, which is so easy to do nowadays with the internet, where you can just, look up anything of anyone's preference. These are the types of things that make people actually want to be your friend and hang out at your place. Makes sense, right? But unfortunately, somehow, the art of hosting has been lost, and people are extremely rude and often won't even offer someone a glass of water while they are over. And that just doesn't make sense. Okay, that's like our most basic human need. You need to be able to provide for someone's needs when they're at your place and not expect them to go thirsty. Something else we used to do back in those days when we would hang out at each other's places are board games and card games and other games like that. Some people were into games like Pictionary, these types of games that you can act out that maybe just need like a pad of paper, things like that. And games have only gotten better with time. And, there's all sorts of new games, like Cards for Humanity or Cards Against Humanity, I think it's called, and all sorts of awesome adult-themed games, drinking games, stuff like that. And so game nights are something I highly recommend and really miss, and something I used to like to do with friends back in the day, but these days it's pretty much impossible for me to find anyone cool enough to actually do that with except my immediate family members. However, all that being said, while you may not want to socialize every day, and that's perfectly understandable, what we used to do when we would opt out of socializing back in the day would be to stay home and read a book or watch a movie. What we didn't do was lay in bed all night, doom scrolling through brain rot content or on social media, pretending to have a social life that we actually didn't. Well, what we were really doing was just giving ourselves squirrel brain, insomnia, depression, anxiety, and perhaps other mental illnesses, which there have been an extremely large number of studies proving. Way too many for me to even list, in fact. When I Googled this, because I originally was going to provide citations to the studies proving this, I found that there were 50 studies on just the body image issues alone across 17 different countries. And that's not even beginning to delve into all the other studies on other mental health conditions that social media causes, such as depression, anxiety, and so on and so forth. The amount of studies is just overwhelming and way too many for me to even begin to list. So if you want the proof that social media is bad for your brain and mental health, just Google it. But suffice it to say here that social media is a mental illness factory. That is a fact that has been abundantly and redundantly proven. And it is not helping us to be social, but is only socially distancing and disconnecting us, making us all sociopathic and rude towards one another. But I don't really have to tell you this, do I? I mean, everyone who has been on it knows exactly how people act and talk there, how using it makes you feel and makes your brain operate. The question isn't whether or not social media is good for us and society as a whole, but whether you are in denial about it or not, and whether or not you actually want a real-world social life or want to live in a simulation like an NPC in the Matrix. And then additionally, I'll add that when it comes to the entertainment that we're getting on cell phones, it's also not an improvement from what we used to entertain ourselves with either, but rather a degradation. The old-fashioned kinds of entertainment were better and much more artistic and intelligent. Full albums, books, feature-length films. These are not only more entertainment, but are better for our minds. Why? Because their longer form not only requires greater attention span, but goes more into depth on the subject matter, and thus it is more intellectual and requires more thinking and is far more stimulating to your brain. Even the shorter, more light-hearted comedy TV shows back in those days, like Seinfeld, for instance, used to be not only funnier, but more intelligent and thought-provoking than those today, as Seinfeld, for instance, was all about social commentary. And so it really made me think sociologically, which is originally what inspired me to go into the social sciences. These forms of entertainment are smarter and more artistic and will heal your mental health and build intelligence rather than destroying them. It's time to reject the Matrix and start living life in the real world again, as nature intended. So, in summation, if you didn't know before, you now know what the negative changes are that have taken place between the 1900s and now, and everything that needs to be rejected. If you want a better life like we had back in the good old days, you have got to give these things up and revert back to doing things the way we used to when life was actually good. And it isn't hard either. We all used to do it, and we got by perfectly well without modern technology. There was literally nothing wrong with the way we were living back then, and no problem that cell phones and social media and online dating and brain rot content have solved. We did not actually have trouble with meeting people or having social lives or dating and falling in love and getting married or entertaining ourselves. We were in fact doing way better with those things, and these technologies only made everything worse. We also did not have any shortage of entertainment. Our entertainment was higher quality and more artistic and meaningful and made us smarter, not stupider. Cell phones and the technologies that go with them are not solving any problems. They are causing them. They are not improving your life. They are ruining it. If you want to live better, feel better, and be smarter and stronger, you have got to give up your cell phone addiction. Just do what I did almost 3 years ago now, back in the winter of 2022, and get rid of the goddamn thing and go cold turkey. Cancel your service subscription and any subscriptions you have to any apps, streaming services, and other memberships on your phone. Close down all your dating profiles and social media accounts. Delete them permanently. And most importantly, stop texting people. Call people when you need to talk on the phone. And if you need to have a longer conversation, then do it in person. And if you really want to quit your addiction, then just throw out your cell phone. Better yet, crush it so that you can't recover it. And you could do what I did and instead start using your computer with a internet-based phone service like Google Voice, which I'm doing for free now, and just use the phone the same way we used to use landlines at home only, tied to a specific location in your phone so that it cannot take over your entire home life. And when you want to be entertained, then watch an artistic movie or put on an album and get to know a real musician, or maybe even get yourself a musical instrument and learn how to play, as I've been doing again since, the start of COVID. Or get yourself some books so that you can actually read and raise your IQ instead of lowering it. If you take these simple actions and start living life the wholesome, old-fashioned way, I promise it will stop getting worse and worse, and will finally start getting better again. Let's end the cyberpunk dystopia and reverse this downward trajectory we've been on. The way to make progress in 2025 is by being retro, primitive even. So I hope that you will all join me in rejecting and resisting these technological trends that are destroying the world, and that you've been enjoying this blast from the past on the 1900s and will use some of this ancient wisdom to better your life in these fucked up times. And I wish you all a happy new year and a great year in 2025 that will hopefully look more like the year 1990 or 2000 than the Orwellian 1984 type of reality we've been living in. And if you found this helpful or inspiring, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel and that your subscription is set to all, and that you check out my other videos in the videos section and the other resources I have for you in the description, such as my books that are linked there and my art channel as well. And please donate whatever you can afford to the channel so that I can actually afford to continue making this content for you. And otherwise, I'll talk to you later.